Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by Pilma. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have the privilege of having Moshe Amsel. And Moshe has helped many, many lawyers over the last several years. And I really want to get him on the show and pick his brains a little bit about marketing and maybe even some IT. But I'm going to let Moshe tell his story, and then we'll get right into it. But just tell us your story. Tell us, how you started, from high school right on up. I just like to hear people's history. I really do.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ken, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I respect that your listeners' time, and I hope that the story that I'm going to share is going to provide value to somebody. But I definitely do have quite the story. I started right out of high school. I never went to college, and I was kind of like hanging out with the wrong crowd. And my mom wanted to get me off the street, so she knew that I loved computers and had a knack for it. And this was back in the day when, computers, the PC was just starting to become mainstream. And she got me a gig at a local computer shop. And I started as an internship where I wasn't getting paid, and ultimately started me out on a 20-year career in the IT industry. And I was really good at what I did. And it was a great career. I also, I got married really young. So shortly around the same time that I started working, I also met my first wife and had 3 daughters with her. So I had my first daughter when I was 19 years old. And that created a situation where I was always chasing responsibility. So everything that I did in my career was always based on the needs of my family at that point. And because I was chasing responsibility, I never really got the chance to sit down and say, hey, what do I want to do? What's my choice in life about what I want to create? And in 2006, I went through a divorce. And when I went through that process, I also, on the side, I had been like a volunteer EMT with the local ambulance corps. So I decided that I'm not going to be seeing my kids every night. So I'm going to sign up for paramedic school. When I finished paramedic school, I took a hiatus from IT and I started working on the paramedic truck full time. And when I was doing that, I had a lot of downtime between calls. Like sometimes we were really busy, but sometimes we were just sitting around and watching flicks on the TV. And I said, this is not a productive life. So I started to do some reflection on, what is it that I want? And I had experienced an amazing experience from my grandfather. He came from Nazi Germany. He was 11 years old, and his mother and his twin siblings died in the Holocaust. He came with his father before, they were stuck. Basically, they got stuck because his sibling had pneumonia and was hospitalized. So him and his father left, and then it ended up being the last boat out. And his mother and twin siblings never made it out. So he came with his father, and they had nothing. They literally, came with the shirts on their backs. And his father was a businessman there, started a business here. He ultimately started a business as well. And together with 4 of his cousins, they purchased an apartment building in the west side of Manhattan. And that apartment building, needless to say, increased in value, created a cash revenue stream for them. It was a very wise investment. And when I went to buy my first home, he said, here, and gave me a down payment, the purchase of my first home. And what I came to find out later is that he did that for every single one of his 36 grandchildren. And that experience as a first-time home buyer, young family, being able to get a leg up on the world because my grandfather made some good decisions with money along the way, really opened my eyes up to an opportunity that I can help other people and empower them with creating generational wealth to not only impact their own lives, but to also impact the lives of others in the future. And when I was doing this reflection, sitting in the medic station, wondering, what am I going to do with my life? I said, that's really what I want to do. I don't want to be known for fixing somebody's server in the middle of the night. I want to go out there in the world and I want to help people create this wealth that's going to really impact their future generations. Now, I had a lot of business experience from my IT world. I had risen up the ranks. I had run IT departments, and I really didn't have any experience on the financial side of running a business. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to become an accountant. And that's how I'm going to start and help people in this direction. So I went and got my bachelor's, followed by my master's, sat for the CPA exams, and then I couldn't get a job because I was qualified in the wrong way. Nobody wanted an entry-level accountant who already had kids, already had a previous career, and wasn't going to put 60 to 80 hours in and get molded by that firm. At that same time, I found out that my ex-wife had become an alcoholic and my kids were being traumatized through abandonment. And I got my kids and started this journey with them of taking them to therapy and Alateen meetings. And all of those took a ton of time. And that's when it became apparent to me that I can't work for somebody else. I can't allow somebody else to control my ability to be able to care for my family in the way that I need to. I need to own my time. I need to be able to make my own decisions. And that started the journey of me opening my own accounting firm. And when I first started, I said, there's a lot of accountants out there, and I don't know how to differentiate myself from the other accountants that are out there. And at the same time, I had gotten turned on to a podcast by Mike Michalowicz and Ron Saharian on Grow My Accounting Practice, where I learned about this thing called Profit First. So there's a book Mike Michalowicz wrote called Profit First. And reading the book, I realized that this could be the answer, right? His system is so basic. It's basically grandma's envelope system for businesses that solves a real problem where the business owner is making decisions from their bank balance, not really thinking about their tax bill that's going to come later, not really thinking about paying themselves first and those things. So I really dove into the Profit First system, and I ended up becoming a Profit First professional for their organization. So basically, they certify accountants, bookkeepers, and coaches to implement Profit First in other people's businesses. And through their headquarters, I got a lead to a law firm in Manhattan. And that law firm became a client of mine. They were really happy with the work I was doing, and then in turn referred me to another law firm and another law firm. Before I knew it, I had a half a dozen law firms that were all clients of mine. And what was interesting is that I was getting an inside look into the back, the underwear of the company, right? And what was happening is all these firms had beautiful offices, they had staff, and the owners were literally struggling to make payroll, and they were transferring money back and forth between their personal account and the business account just to be able to cover that payroll every 2 weeks. And I looked at it, I said, how is this possible? How could it be that there's professionals out there that are operating what seems to be like a really good, effective business, and at the same time, they don't have anything to show for it? They're working their butts off, and they literally are struggling to make payroll. And that's when I set out on a journey to say, look, I got to stick my flag in the ground somewhere. I got to work with a group of people. Why not start here? And that's really where Profit with Law was born. And I started working with lawyers to help them figure this out. There's been a lot of figuring out for me along the way, because every business is the same, but they're different at the same time. And really getting in and understanding how they're arriving at this problem to then be able to provide a solution took some time. But now, after being in it for a number of years, what's come out as, from all that activity is a ton of tremendous, awesome relationships that I have with all kinds of amazing people like you and a lot of the other professionals out there that are helping lawyers, the owners of software companies that are helping lawyers, the podcast that I run, Profit with Law, where I get to meet people behind the microphone and do that. And ultimately, I developed a coaching program where I help lawyers in a group coaching setting to flip the script on their business and to change their success, get their time back, and really learn to scale their firm, learn to bring staff on and get staff to do the things that they're just holding tight to the chest and doing themselves, and growing in a responsible manner so that they're not sacrificing their own ability to pay their bills in the process of doing that.
Wow, what a story, man. So yeah, and IT So now you work with firms, but do you help them with their marketing too, or just with the profit first, or that part of the whole ball of wax?
Yeah, so I like to look at it as I help them holistically with their entire process. I don't necessarily give specific marketing advice. I think that in the seat that I sit, my job really is to help them see themselves in a mirror where their mirror is currently clouded. And my job is to hold up a mirror that's not clouded. And when somebody's in the thick of it, they really know what they need to do, but it's not easy for them to make the decision to do that because they're in it and they're worried about what if it doesn't work, and there are all kinds of fears that are attached to it. So really where I sit is to help them uncloud that mirror and develop the plan that they already know they need to do, and then take action on the plan and get out of their own way. So I don't necessarily focus on marketing. I don't necessarily focus on finance. I don't necessarily focus on sales and leadership and team development, but I focus on all of those because it's whatever they need at their juncture in their business that they need support on. And the beautiful thing is that that allows me to have all kinds of great relationships with people who focus on each of those areas. Because if somebody's trying to hire somebody, then, I can send them to a place like, a virtual staffing company like Get Staffed Up, or to Wise Hire, who does, helps them bring on full-time people, or, Molly McGrath from Hiring and Empowering Solutions, who helps them not only bring people on, but helps them develop them into leaders. So it's really cool that in this whole creation of this ecosystem that I've stepped into, I've created or developed a number of relationships that really allows me to point my clients in the right direction when they need help. And I don't need to be the problem solver. I just need to be helping them figure out, this is where you need to take action. Now let's make sure you do that.
That's sort of like accountability in a way.
Yeah, I think it's more than accountability, because accountability is just like, oh, I need you to be my mom kind of thing, right? And make sure I do my homework. And I think that this is more, the reasons that law firm owners don't take action are a combination of not knowing what the next step is. So really indecision about what I should be doing, the comfortability and familiarity of the legal work that they're doing. So they gravitate to that. So whenever there's legal work to do, they will skip the stuff they should be working on to go do that. And there was a third component I wanted to highlight, but it's skipping me for right now. But really, it's not so much about accountability as it is helping them figure out why they're not taking that action. Like, what is the thing that's preventing them, and helping them get out of their way. Yeah, the third thing was fear. So fear of failure, it's very interesting, because when you talk about fear, and I try to highlight this to my clients in a way that's easy to understand, but when you're afraid of something, you're predicting an outcome that's undesirable. And the funny thing is that if you give into the fear, you're basically making that undesirable outcome a certainty. Because I'm not going to do this, because if I do it, I might have this negative result. But if I don't do it, I have the negative result. So the only way to have the potential of a positive outcome is to overcome the fear. And the more that we understand that, and then we embrace that, the more we can just get out of our own way and recognize that there's really nothing wrong with not being successful with that thing. At least then I know it doesn't work and I can move on to something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, I do masterminds, and like we just had one down in Key West, and one of the big deals is that they always tell me, they didn't teach us anything in law school about running a business, and it is the fear of the unknown. They don't want to make a bad move, and they don't know what should be their next step. They know the general deal is that they don't want to grow, or they're tired of working 80 hours. Or they want more balanced life, or they want more profits, but they really don't know, like you said, you're pointing them to the right people. It's like, that's the great thing I like about the masterminds we do is that you got people there that got different strengths, because some people I've seen some lawyers really know how to market, but just terrible on infrastructure. And then I've seen some lawyers, I've had a couple of lawyers over the years, just couldn't make a decision, man. It's like waffle. And I don't know about you, but it drives me nuts, because, I think people, your firm, I think everybody, they just want a decision. I mean, even if it's wrong, they'll be okay with it. But just never just waffling back and forth, taking forever to make a decision is crazy, I think. I don't know. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, look, I think that indecision is one of the killers of growth. And I think that you can sit in indecision all day, and the outcome of indecision is inaction. So, in order to grow your firm, you have to take action. You have to take positive steps in the direction. I like to look at it as a journey where, if you think of like a GPS and getting in a car and driving somewhere, that's the journey you're on with your law firm. So, there's a lot of pieces at play when you look at that, right? Number one, if you don't put in a destination in your GPS, you're going to wander around aimlessly. So I start with, you need to know what your destination is. So let's get clear on what you want. And once we get clear on what you want, now we can say, okay, now what is the path to get there? Let's navigate our route, right? And often the path chosen before someone enters into my world is one with lots of detours, because they haven't really thought about the path. They know maybe they know generally where they want to go, but they haven't really thought about what it's going to take to get there. So they're just throwing mud at the wall and hoping something's going to stick. So what we do is once we have the destination defined, we then map the route. We say, okay, what is the fastest way to get from here to there? And often it means changing what they're doing. Often lawyers think that, I need to add another practice area in order to get to where I want to go. And, I think that they need to shed practice areas to get where they want to go. You got to focus on one thing. And even within a practice area, you focus on something in the practice area. Like if you're doing personal injury, don't try to get the big payout cases and the ones that are going to settle. Choose which one you're going to be. Am I going to be a settler, or am I going to be one that takes everything to court? And then focus on those and get really good at it, and find someone else to give the other thing to, and then get a piece of the pie. Because if you try to be the master of everything, the jack of all trades, you end up being the master of none. So I think it's really important to have a concrete plan in place on paper, that at least on paper it works, before you try to execute it. And then you can't steer a parked car. That's a line I heard from a friend of mine who's also a coach. And I thought it was the most incredible line ever. Because if you don't get into gear, and this is the conversation about inaction, if you don't actually drive the car, you can have the best laid plan, the best route on the map, that's going to fastest way to get there. But if you don't actually put it in drive and start driving and make the turns that the GPS tells you to make, you ain't going anywhere. Right. And that's really what inaction does. Indecision creates inaction. Inaction means you're not driving anywhere. And that's the way that I like to look at it.
I read a book about 20 years ago by a guy named Robert Ringer, and it was Nothing Happens Till You Take Action. And it had a profound effect on me. And this guy, his deal was, he just always said, whatever, I'll just go make some more money. I'll just go make some more money or whatever. I mean, he didn't never really plan. He just kind of reacted. And if things went bad, he said, I know how to make money. I'll just go make some more money. I'm not worried about it. But then he got smart and figured out, there's more to it than just say, I'll just go make some more money. Because he did have a knack for making money. And some people do more so than others. But I think what you hit on is that, certain people got strengths. And if you try, you need to leverage your strengths and delegate your weaknesses, and, not try to be, what is it? When you try to be everything to everybody, you're nothing to no one. I mean, that sort of saying. Yep. So I agree with you. So you're really coaching almost, really, because, and you tell me, I've always heard that coaching is you don't really tell them what to do, but you try to pull questions out to get them to make the decision, kind of steer them, and then you can send them to those people. But consulting is you tell them exactly what to do. This is the first three things you need to do, bam, bam, bam. And I don't know. I mean, have you got an opinion on which is better or what you do or whatever? Because I've always thought about it. I do both. I know which one I like better, but I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Look, I'm a big believer in building a scalable business. So to me, consulting is more of a one-on-one type of experience. You can't really consult in a group because everybody needs their own direction to give. So right. I chose to grow a coaching business because I want to be able to help as many people as possible. That's part of my mission. And consulting would require, it's either very limiting or I need to just bring on a bunch of consultants to do that. However, there is a certain aspect of consulting in the coaching, because yes, most of coaching happens by eliciting responses through questions to help somebody arrive at their own decision of what they're doing wrong or where they need to go, because essentially all you're doing is you're helping them see what they can't see inside of them. However, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And therefore, the answer might not be inside of them. Like if they've never hired somebody before, they need some help with learning how to hire somebody. So that would fall under the guides of consulting or education. And there's an aspect of that. So in our coaching program, we do a lot of helping people, figure out what their next step is or figure out what's stopping them and that's the coaching part of it. But there's also a measure of sending somebody in the right direction to either another resource, or I can provide it because I have that experience and I can just share that with them. And often it's those conversations where the conversation becomes more educational or consultative, that it helps other people in the room too, because other people are struggling with it, but maybe they didn't voice it. And, so I don't think it's black and white, one or the other, but there's definitely a distinction. And I certainly could go out as a consultant and, help a law firm turn around, but I'd be embedded in one law firm for a year or 18 months to make that happen. And here I can have a room of 150 attorneys and make them all have effective change in 18 months. So I'd much rather that one.
Funny business model too. I mean, really it is, because I've done both, and I kind of agree with you. That's why I like, I've done consulting. I just about quit it. I think I got 2 jobs left that I'm going to do next year, or 3. But it can, it can wear on you as a consultant too, because you, I don't know, you just kind of, versus the masterminds or what you're doing the coaching. I got like 5 masterminds, so I'm dealing with like 100 lawyers over like a 3-week period, and I'm getting to hear all these different things and asking the right questions. I really believe asking the right questions is the key to everything. If you know the right question, that's the big deal, and that's where experience and background helps, like with your IT and your accounting and this profit first. I mean, you got all this background to be able to spot something. And I think the other thing too is listening to you talk. This is what I've always said. Everybody needs a mentor. I've got them because I think I'm pretty damn smart, but sometimes I can't see the forest for the trees. It's so much easier to see it from the outside than it is from the in, because it's sort of like what you tell people, when you try to represent yourself, you got to fool for a client, because you got your emotions involved in it. And that's the same deal. You need somebody to bounce stuff off of, just because you're so embroiled in it, and you got your emotions tied up in it. And sometimes you're so wrapped up in it, you can't see the forest for the trees. I don't know. Have you seen, you agree or disagree with me on that? And you can disagree.
I absolutely agree with you. I have my own coach. I invest heavily with my coach and both time and money. I practically all the travel I do is to go to my coach's, retreats and stuff like that. So I'm a big believer in having that in place for you. And I'm trying to think of like the best analogy, but like if you're in your house and the window shades are drawn, you can't tell if there's a plane coming crashing down onto your roof, right? But somebody standing outside can see the plane coming and alert you to it, right? No. When you're in your business, you're in it and you can't see the outside. So it's kind of like the bird's eye view versus being in it. If you said the forest for the trees, right? If you're in the forest, you see 4 or 5 trees around you, but somebody who's up here, hovering overhead sees hundreds of thousands of trees. And that's really what somebody from the outside is able to do is they get that outside view, the outside perspective. And there's just no way for you to have that perspective when you're in it. And if you look at coaching as in general, the best place to look is professional athletes, right? They're really good at what they do. Why do they need a coach? Because they need somebody to help them see why they're not achieving the next level result. They cannot see it themselves. No matter how good they are, they can't figure out what is wrong with their technique, or what is wrong with their training, or what is wrong with their diet to be able to achieve that next step. The coach can see it because the coach has the holistic view and knows exactly where they're headed, what their weaknesses are, what their strengths are, and can help them create the program and monitor it to make sure that they're achieving the result that they want. And I think the proof is like this. Ask any business owner who had an effective coach whether they think that they don't need a coach anymore, right? Anybody who's experienced coaching in a really effective, positive manner would never continue going without a coach ever, because it helps you shortcut your results.
Yeah.
Because the more that you can figure out how to get out of your own way, the faster you're going to move.
Yeah, I agree. So we're getting near the end. I got a couple questions, burning questions, been back here in my head I want to ask you. So what is the latest book? What's the last book you read?
The last book I read, that's a good question. I just got into a book on Audible, and I'm just going to pull up my Audible real quick and get the title for you because I don't want to get it wrong. So I do a combination of reading books physically, like in my hand, and also listening to them on Audible. So I do that when I'm exercising or when I'm busy, because I got 6 kids. So I'm busy, and
you're real busy.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why I need to look up the book is because we recently had a baby and we had quite the adventure. So my wife had some complication with the pregnancy, and we went to the hospital at 29 weeks. And she was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and then he was born via C-section. He was in the NICU for 3 weeks. So we were like in Columbia Presbyterian, and I'm in Rockland County. So I'm like in a suburb of New York City. We were in a New York City hospital for 6 weeks. And, I didn't get a chance to pick up a book during that time. And now I've been playing catch up, right? I had a new baby at home, and I'm trying to just like finish the year strong. And we missed 6 weeks of productivity. So I put my book reading aside, but I still get on the Peloton. I still try to get that exercise in. So I'm still, in Audible. So the latest book that I was listening to is Who Not How, which is by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Harvey. And really it's the epitome of what we were talking about, right? Because it's all about how am I going to get to the result that I want? And when you start to think about where is the result, and you suddenly can realize I can't do it myself. I need to do it with other people. And the sooner that you start asking the question of who, not how, like who can do this for me rather than how do I do this, the sooner that you can start to delegate, start to expand your team. And really the growth that happens for a law firm owner happens when they grow their team. When you start to buy someone else's time and then sell it.
He's a brilliant guy. He's a brilliant guy, Dan Sullivan. I went through his program in 2009 through 2012. I actually read that book. Yeah. And it's very simplistic. I mean, it's really got more pictures than it got words, if I remember correctly. But if you're doing Audible, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's quick read, but it's just really, real like you said, it's just very simplistic. When you get ready to try to get something done, don't ask how, ask who. Because there's someone out there that knows can do it 10 times faster, quicker, more economically than you trying to figure out how to do it yourself, unless it's something you just want to do. So what's the best business advice you've ever been given?
That is a really good question. And I think that it's the Nike logo. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, that's sort of like Robert Ringer, that book I read 20 years ago. He said, you just got to take action. I think you were talking about the parked car. He talked about, a bicycle, you don't move till you start pedaling, so you got to start pedaling. Same kind of deal. I like yours better actually than mine. I like that one better because it's more clearer. Yeah. So anything you want to add, anything I should have asked you or something you want to, it being in or anything you want to say to our listeners or viewers out there?
I think you wanted to ask me, like, what are my top 3 pieces of advice or tips to a law firm owner who might be listening to this podcast. And for me, it starts with the plan. right? And creating a plan and putting it in a drawer and never executing on it is a waste of your time. But executing on a plan that you haven't created is also a waste of your time. So I think it's really, really important to create a plan, which starts with a vision of, where do I want to go? I mean, we really talked about it. It's the parked car analogy. So make sure that you have your destination, that you know what your route is, and that you actually start driving. So the first piece is the plan. The second piece is to take action. And the reason why I said just do it is the best piece of advice I ever got is because if I look at every time that I slowed down, if I look at every time that I fell off the wagon, that I wasn't making progress, it was because I stopped taking action because of a failure or a perceived failure that I had, or fear of, what's going to happen if I do it. And every time that I'm reminded to take action, and I just get out there and I do it, I see results. Literally every time I see results. And, if you have a plan and then you figure out how to take consistent action on that plan, you will experience more growth in a 12-month period than you probably experienced in a 10-year period. And so those are the top two. The third is know your numbers, especially the ones that have a dollar sign, right? One of the things that we talk about in Profit First is that we tend to do bank balance accounting. You wake up in the morning, you check how much money you have in the bank, and that sets the tone for the day. If it's empty, you go out, you're trying to make collections or make a sale. If it's flush, you're trying to figure out where can I spend it. And that is not the right way to operate a business. So create a dashboard where you can measure your metrics, which includes your cash flow, and operate from that dashboard. Measure your results from that dashboard, empower your team from that dashboard, create contests, create bonus structures, create ways for them to get in on the action of the growth of your firm by buying into the numbers. And, that's the last thing, because a plan with action is nothing if you can't measure your results. As soon as you can measure your results, then it gives you feedback on whether to continue that action or take a different one. And those are the three pieces that if you get those right, you're going to be successful.
And I think the biggest one, I mean, everybody talks about the plan, the vision, the plan, execution, the strategy, all that stuff. But, I've been studying under Vern Harnish, Scaling Up, Rockefeller Habits. I got certified as a Scaling Up coach. He's got like four things, like strategy, execution, people, and cash flow. But you know what he says, and this is something that I wish I'd paid more attention to it when I was practicing. I mean, I really preach it now like you do, and I don't have an accounting degree, but I know how important it is. He says you can get by with average people, and you can get by with just adequate execution. You can get by with just just so strategy. He said, but when you run out of cash, brother, it's over with. Game over. You see most companies, they don't make it because they're undercapitalized or they don't have the cash flow. And they were showing me stuff, man, that just blew my mind. Where if you could increase, your price by your sales by 1%, decrease your overhead by 1%, and do another thing by 2%, it could increase your cash flow like 15, 20%, which is crazy. It don't make sense, but it does. It works. You know it better than I do, I'm sure. But I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just now, some of my coaching clients have been grappling with, hey, I know I need to hire somebody, but I don't know that I can make it work. And when we look at the under the hood of the business, we say, well, wait a second, you're not charging enough for your time. And then I demonstrate. I say, well, let's say that you're billing 1,500 hours a year, which they're not, but let's say you were billing 1,500 hours a year, and you raise your rates $50 an hour. That is the salary of a full-time employee. That's $75,000, right? So, understanding the levers that you can pull to make the movement on the cash conversation is really, really important to understand how to move the needle in your business. The other thing is that we're in an environment where it's so easy to start a business with nothing that law firm owners don't look at the possibility of capital in building their business. And it's a big mistake that I see out there in the marketplace where you're trying to do sweat equity to build a business. And if you were just willing to invest some money up front, you can short circuit your growth by literally 10 years. And we're in an environment where money is really cheap. It's easy to get to it. It's easy, and I think that if you if you are at a point where you've developed some systems and processes, you know what your plan is, you know what your end result is that you're aiming for, and you have a system to get there, it is a prime opportunity to start to put some money to work. Because if you had $200,000 in the bank, wouldn't you spend $4,000 a month on marketing? Wouldn't you have an attorney working for you? Wouldn't you have a paralegal working for you, or a support person? And what if you had those people in place? How quickly could they be paying for themselves? Probably 90 days or sooner, you know? And really the thing stopping people from doing that is, oh, I can't afford to, because I'm judging it from where I am sitting right now with my cash situation. So I think that understanding how to invest capital and deploy capital in a meaningful way is also a conversation that we're just not having, and it's really important.
You know, and I'm going to finish with this story. I hate to tell stories, but I like stories, and this is it just proves what you just said is true. I practiced 12 years, sweat equity, I decided I wanted more, and I wanted to start marketing. At that time, I was grossing $500,000 in revenue. I went out and borrowed every piece of property I had, everything I could get. I got an equity, a line of credit, $500,000. I went on TV, and in 5 years, I was doing $7 million. In 7 years, in 5 years, that's 14 times, and that $500,000 was paid off way early. You know what I'm saying? And
right. And it took you 12 years to get to $500,000, but then it took you 5 years to get to 7 million. And it's simply because you were willing to deploy some capital, you were willing to take some risk. But also, if you had borrowed $500,000 when you first started, you would have wasted it on things that were unimportant. Probably. And I think that's really, there is a give and take in this conversation where somebody just starting out, they might not want to deploy that kind of capital on day one. Yeah. But if you understand how to deploy it and where the right places are, you certainly can shortcut a lot of the efforts that you're putting in.
Never really thought about it till you just said that. You know, I've been doing all this stuff for years, but that's the truth. You know, I took a chance, you know?
Yep.
Well, listen, I appreciate it. How can people get up with you if they want to learn more about your coaching program?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is our podcast, Profit with Law. You can go to our website, profitwithlaw.com. We constantly have things going on. I put on a conference once a year called the Law Firm Growth Summit. You can check that out at lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. But ultimately, we talked about a book called Who Not How. So if any of you want a free copy of that book, I have, I purchased hundreds of them on Kindle versions, the ebook version, and I'd love to give that out to you. Just shoot an email over to my support team, info@dreambuilderfinancial.com, info@dreambuilderfinancial.com. And just in that email, just say, hey, I heard Moshe on Ken's podcast to grow your law firm. And I'd love a free copy of the book, Who Not How. If you send that email, we'll send you a key to unlock it and go and read that book. I think it's going to be really impactful in your growth. And I'd love it if you just check our podcast out. Really, that's it's a lot of great material on there. You're already a podcast listener. You're sitting here listening to Ken. Add another one to your routine.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is good. Well, listen, thank you so much. And until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success. Thanks.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.